So we're talking about reading Revelation through the background or the imagery of Joshua. In the book of Joshua, there are two spies that are sent into Jericho. And people who've read the story sort of remember that story. But what they fail to realize is in the book of Revelation, there are two witnesses that are sent into this city. So
and that's part of a pattern in the Bible. I don't know that people pick up on that, but in the law, you have to establish the truth of the matter by 2 or 3 witnesses. And God, who knows everything, he's not having to establish anything, but every time God brings judgment, he brings 2 witnesses into a place to find out if it really does deserve the condemnation that he's imminently going to pour out on them.
Shows his justice. That he's just not arbitrary and doing
right. He's
stuff
establishing it according to his own. He's obedient to his own law, which Christ will be when he's incarnate. So anyway, the first time I think you see that is before he brings the judgment of the flood. He has the witness of Enoch and Noah. We know that from Hebrews 11.
Yes.
So they were witnesses of righteousness and preachers of righteousness.
Yes.
And then the flood comes. We see it with Sodom. He sends the 2 angels, remember, to Lot's house to see if it's really as bad as it was described, and that they needed to be nuked. And so with Jericho, they're the 2 witnesses that Joshua sends into Jericho, and they have a little excursion, and they go into the house of the whore. Now, why do you think they do that?
Well, they do that to see what's going on, but
maybe they go in there because if you go in, I suppose that if you go into a house like that, there's not a lot of questions about who are you and things of that sort. So they've obviously been discovered in the city, and so the king is looking for them to kill them.
Sure.
And that's where Rahab.
It's a place you can slide in pretty quickly without any.
And Rahab lies, and she's called Righteous Rahab for doing that. Remember, she tells the king, "Oh, they were here, but they left. If you go quickly, and she's very clever. Yeah. Go quickly, go chase them down that way. They went that way, so they tear off without searching anything. She has faith, saving faith.
Sure, understanding though that there's 2 spies that go in. That there's a complete literary cue in Revelation. There's 2 witnesses that go into
2 witnesses that go into
of course, when you're
the
going
wicked
in,
city that God is going to
where there's also
bring
a whore,
judgment.
Where there's also a whore.
There is also a whore there.
So I think
who's identified with her scarlet and her linen.
Yes.
As Rahab is identified with the scarlet, and she buries them under flax, which is what's used to make linen. So
Correct.
She's identified with the same 2 fabrics, which is fascinating.
Okay. I think the great point here to make is we're talking about, and trying to build this case that Revelation should be read through the lens or the backdrop of the book of Joshua. I think that it's just not a coincidence that there's 2 spies that went into the city and
not
there's 2
at
witnesses
all.
that went
But
into the
it's
city.
part of a pattern. You read it, of course, according to
Absolutely.
Joshua, but it's the pattern that runs right through the whole Scripture.
Absolutely.